Right, so another approach to tracking a facial feature or like the head of somebody and then covering it up, instead of covering it up with something like black bars there, sometimes the preferred way is to simply blur it. It might be blurring the whole head or just part of the face, or it might be even more sophisticated. It might include the shoulders, it might include a hat, or it might be some other things that you want to mask off. You might see a license plate. As this guy is walking in front of a car, there might be a license plate that needs to be blurred. You don't want to necessarily cover it up totally black though. So what you need for that is a technique which is more of a general tracking mat, and that's what we'll do. So we'll look at a different approach now, which is how to create a general tracking mat. So here's how we do it again in this animation, and what we'll use is the tool called the curve tool. Right, with the curve tool you can create curves. Big surprise there, and you can give it. Let's start from the scratch, from the beginning here. So let's say I'm going to zoom in a little bit here and make sure we are on the first frame, and I want to let's make it very fast, of course. So I'm going to go here and say add a point right at the beginning, at the top here, one by the ear, one below the chin, and one on the right side, and that's enough points for Dog Waffle to go into spline curve interpolation mode. You don't have to necessarily. You can also stick with a coarse straight line interpolation. Right, there's a toggle, and you also don't have to have it be a closed curve. But in this case, obviously, we do want a closed curve, and we want it to be a spline or a smooth interpolation. Now, let's say we're going to stay a little bit below the hairline. Make sure we go perhaps all the way down to below the chin or where the shirt starts, somewhere around there, and this one we'll put over the ears right there. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll keyframe that. We'll say let's go here and create a keyframe. Alright, now I have some earlier flags. I'm going to unset those because we will get back to these. And so there we go. So we have a keyframe for this curve, and it's also at the very end. One keyframe, as you see here, and one at the very beginning. And what we need to do is really track it. So this is something that in some cases you'll be able to have the software do for you, and we can go to the motion tracker assistant, and what it does is it's very similar to the tracker we had earlier, where we have a block size and we have a search area. Right, and then sometimes it'll be successful at finding that particular shape and this particular shape here and this area here and this color combination and shape, and tracks that, but sometimes it's not. And chances are that some of them will fall off, especially when you have very big areas with very little detail. It's better at tracking when you have a lot of detail. So if you have like real video where every other pixel is basically a different color, so to speak, there's a good chance you will be tracking pretty well. But when you have plain areas here with poor lighting and pretty much almost all straight color the same, it's going to be difficult to track that. So what I'll suggest in this case is let's do this manually. We only have a few points, and it'll be a little bit easier and faster to do that anyway. It's a good experience, good experiment. So let's go to the last frame first. We know that one is totally off. Let's simply, we see right now we have the options. We no longer have the options to add points or draw them anew or delete single points. That's because we have keyframed it. Once you've keyframed it, you're stuck with the number of points that you have selected so far. But what you can do, and that's this option here, is to move points or start all over again. So we will stay with this one here to move points, and we can say this one goes over the hair, this one goes a little bit to the left where the ear would be, and this one here goes to the right by the ear. This one goes right below the chin. Alright, so that's good. Let's make sure we don't forget to keyframe it. Right? Just because we move it doesn't mean we keep it. So now we have this guy moved to that location, and starting from here. Obviously in between we have a little bit of work to do here. Let's go to the middle. Alright, let's go there. Let's move this guy up there. This is something that really will not take a whole lot of time. It's worth this time, this effort. Let's go place this one a little bit below the hairline and keyframe it. Alright, so now we have already this transition going here. Now here he definitely needs a little bit of a tracker. So let's go move it over here. And so what you see what we're doing is just manually creating keyframes for this shape to track it. Actually not too bad. Now here we need another let's see, where are the keyframes? We have one here, and then we do need this one here. I would basically look for where it's falling out of the frame or out of the curve the biggest, right? Where the biggest distance is. That's where it probably needs another keyframe. Now here, look at that, we're doing pretty good already. This one we could possibly adjust a little bit. Why not? Let's give him that bobbing head, right? Let's go over here, and now here it's definitely off. Alright, so now how far does it go? About here is where the maximum distance is. Let's go grab these points, quickly bring them in right over his face, and keyframe that. I think we're getting close here. Look at that. This one, yeah, might need a little bit earlier. So let's go zoom over here, move him over. And I'm doing this with one hand, but if you use the shift and the control key, you can also move around, pan around, and zoom in and out to get a closer look and do a little bit a better job here. So there's a couple more here. This one here is off. Let's keep that where it's supposed to be. And let's see, create a keyframe there. And then let's see, this one here jumps over. Ooh, it goes off pretty far and then immediately has another keyframe. I guess we have a few too many, but you know, you really can't have too many keyframes. You may have too few. So here we go. Now there it's jumping out. So let's go jump, put this guy over here. One more. Okay, now here we don't like that. We need to make sure that his face remains inside the curve. Okay, and then this guy, we had a keyframe already, but obviously not a very good job. We might want to do a little bit better job here. Keyframe that anew to replace the prior one. Alright, so let's double check there and make sure that we are always keeping his face inside that curve as we scrub through it. This one's a little bit iffy. We could possibly adjust that as well. Yeah. That's good, that's good, that's good. You know, you look, oh, this one's coming close, but I think it'll fly. Oh, there's a little jumpy going here because we have too many, couple of keyframes really close together. We could probably fix that, but my time is up, so I'm going to call this a day. Now, what do we do with this? All we have right now is a curve that's changing shape and that happens to match where the face is going, right? In that frame sequence of the video. What we need to do really is tell the system to turn this curve into a selection mask. We can actually do this right there. When we see right here, there's a couple of choices. One of them is to tell it to fill with the current fill shading. Well, that's not what we want because it would do that just on one frame. And we don't want to fill it. We also don't want it to be just rendered into the alpha channel like this, because it would do that here, but it wouldn't track it. Right? It would just match for the last one here. What we really need is to do that automatically on the fly every time that we advance from one frame to the next one. And this is where you do that. In the rotor tools, you can say use curve as alpha. Right? So what does that mean? Well, it now uses it as an alpha. And you can go and quickly see where is the alpha. Is it on the outside or is it on the inside? Let's go, where is it there? Store alpha. Well, it's on the inside. That's the selection. Now, it's very crisp here, right? If you zoom this up a little bit, if you make it bigger, you can see that it's a very crisp transition. Maybe you'd like it a little bit more, I don't know, something like soft transition, right? So you could go here and soften that, do a little bit of anti-aliasing, or even flat out blur it and do that transition, make that transition really blurry. Let's see what the maximum looks like. At 32, if you select and store the alpha again, you can now see that it doesn't have that crisp transition anymore. It's a bit more of a blurry transition. So if that's something you need, you've got it right there. Alright, so we got the curve as alpha. We could also invert it if we needed to, right? If we wanted the outside to be processed, not the inside. And we can blur it. And then at that point, you know, if this is something you're going to work on again later, you may want to save it, right? Save this curve. This is a path that you can save as a file. But most importantly, you can now use this path as a mat. This is now what we call a traveling mat. We are tracking the face and it is traveling along it. It's a traveling mat, also known as a tracking mat. And what do you do with it? Well, for instance, one thing you could do is to go and tell it to go to the animated area and, I don't know, fill the selection or merge it with what's in the background in the swap buffer. Let's go with the fill. Alright, and well, the content that's in the swap buffer happens to be plain white. So what it's doing is it's actually putting that all over the face in every frame. Okay, well, that will do the job as far as like making it impossible to see who this is, but it's not very cool. So let's go and load that video again. What was it? AVI, load AVI, and that's the original there before. The curve is not affected, it's still there in the same space, and as long... Oh no, wait, the curve was affected. Ah, darn it, we should have saved it. And here it is. I didn't say save it, but I mean, it did say save it, but it didn't save it, so we'll have to do that again. Alright, well, lesson learned, always save, and save often. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll get back as soon as I've done that. Okay, I'm going to try to recreate this curve really quickly. Alright, so I am back here and I think I'm back in business. I've created a new tracking curve, and what I'll do here is to make sure that I don't lose it, I will save it right there, and it'll be in the same folder, and this will be face off. Alright, this is going to be allowing us to take his face off. So the roto curve has been saved, and if we go in and load this video again, you know, maybe you paint over it and you mess it up, and too many frames messed up and whatnot. Well, if you go and load this new this original AVI file, where is it? There before, that's the one. We have learned that resets the tracking mat, the curve, and if we go back to it, we may still have a curve, but we don't have the keyframes anymore. Right, so since we saved it, we can now go and open the tracking mat, face off. There it is. RTO is for roto, and we now are back in business. We have a tracking curve going along that desired shape end. So now we're ready to use it. Let's make sure we go tell it to use it as an alpha. There we go. Make sure we go blur it a little bit. Let's go all the way to the max. Why not? And have a quick look at what that selection mask looks like. This is a tracking mat. We can store alpha, and there it is. Alright, so that's for this frame, and the next frame it will change and follow the image underneath it. Alright, so what we want to do now is, well, let's use that to actually blur this area. Okay, and this is what we do. We go to the timeline editor, and in the timeline editor, you know that there's lots of filters, and some of these filters allow you to blur. So there's a whole blur category. There it is, blur, like the Gaussian blur. And what you can do is set the blur amount right there, and you can barely see it. Well, you can definitely tell it's not blurring the outside, it's blurring the inside. If you want to see some other filters, there you go. Let's do color adjustment. Add some red, there it is. Or reduce the red, reduce the blue and the green as well. And so it's all black. So these are the things you can do with the selection mask in effect there, right? You can do a threshold filter so that it's totally white or black or somewhere in between there. There's all sorts of, look at that, this is cool, look at this. Oh, that's actually really cool. Let's apply that. Let's do that one. Okay, so let's go render, or maybe adjust it a little bit more. Oh, I think that was just perfect. There you go. There you go. Let's go render that. And so what we have now is the tracking mat following it, the filter for the blurring of the threshold being applied there on the fly, and we just created this little thing there. Alright, so now let's say we didn't want that, or we wanted a little bit more, we need to also add some blurring to that. That's really what I wanted initially, right? So let's go back to the video, the animation, load our AVI file, there it is, that's the original. And then remember that causes us to have to reload the roto. There you go, and the tracking mat is back in business. And so now at this point, instead of putting that white face there, what we'll do is go to where the blur is, and the blur is right there. Let's do a Mystic Vision. No, let's just do the most common one here, the Gaussian blur, right? And render that. So now we got the Gaussian blur going along the face, And that's really a very common thing that you need to do when you need to blur something out. Now, there may be some times where you want the face to be blurred only at a particular point in time. Right? So you want to see the face for some parts of the frames, and then some of it you want to blur it away. One way to do that is to actually work with these parameters. You can keyframe these filters. You can keyframe how much blurring you want there. Right? But that will be for another tutorial. Here is what we just created. At this point we can go and dump or clear the keyframes. We can actually dump the curve altogether, that's right there. And we can clear the alpha selection. And there you go, so we are now at the video that we just created by blurring the face with a tracking matte. Also known as a traveling matte, because it travels with the underlying image that we were tracking. Alright, well, thanks for watching.